This episode of the No Huddle Show is being brought to you by Chevrolet Cadillac of Turnersville, a Penske automotive dealer. Visit today at the Route 42 location in Turnersville, New Jersey, or online at ChevroletofTurnersville.com and CadillacofTurnersville.com. What's going on, everybody? Zack Rosenblatt here, NJ.com, here with Mike Kaye at the NovaCare Complex for the latest episode of the No Huddle Show. This is our preview episode. Lot to talk about. We're fresh off a kind of shocking game that occurred on Thursday night between the Saints and the Cowboys. Maybe shocking is not the right word, because it's hard to win on the road. That's just the reality. But the Saints lost to the Cowboys in a 13-10. Was that the final score?
Yeah.
13-10. The Saints, who just scored like 3,000 points on the Eagles, it felt like, and they were like tacking them on at the end like it was nothing, and they couldn't score a lick against an admittedly better Cowboys defense.
I mean, not just the Eagles. They've been doing it against the
everybody. Yeah.
Everybody. It was an impressive performance by the Cowboys. Like, you could talk about the Thursday night lag when you come from being on the road. You can do all that. The Cowboys are a good team. I mean, especially on defense.
They have a really good defense, and that's going to keep them in every game.
Right. They have good defense. They've got a good running game that worked for the Jaguars last year. It's working for the Cowboys this year. I'm still not convinced Dak Prescott's a very good quarterback, but
he can move the truck along. Like, he can do the job.
Yeah, pardon this comparison, but I think he's a lot like Nick Foles, where if there's a lot of things that are going well around him, he can really put together sustainable wins.
I mean, yeah. Look at when they won the division 2 years ago. They had the best offensive line in the league. They had Ezekiel Elliott. Dez Bryant was okay at that point. They had Jason Witten. So like, you put these pieces around him that like where he doesn't have to do as much, and you're fine. Like, he's gonna get paid more than he's worth, but that's quarterbacks. Like, that's just the reality. If Jerry Jones pays the guys he likes, and he's obsessed with Dak Prescott, so
I mean, last night I didn't think he looked particularly great. He took some of those sacks.
And he scored 13 points. Like,
right, some of the sacks were on the offensive line, but some of those sacks he took. He just didn't. There were blitzes that he didn't see. He just whatever. We don't.
Yeah. We're not. This is the Cowboys podcast because everybody probably would delete it already. But what this means for the Eagles?
Yeah, what this means for the Eagles. Now, it's not good news, obviously.
No.
But the Eagles put themselves in this position to where they are going to need help in some form or fashion. They do control their own destiny somewhat, because if they win out, then they do, but like the chances of them winning out when they haven't won back-to-back games all season is pretty. There's chances are slim.
And you're still relying on the Cowboys losing to like the Colts and stuff like that. So
right. Well, no, but even then, if they win out,
yeah, I know. I'm just saying, but
so yeah, you do have to hope that Frank Reich and the Colts do you a solid and beat them. The Colts are competing to win the AFC South.
Hey man, Frank Reich for Coach of the Year.
Yeah, and they're also trying to make the playoffs. So, you hope that Texans game for the Eagles in Week 16 is going to be the biggest AFC matchup they've had probably in a couple of years, just from the timing of it.
Even moving back a little bit, number one, if they lose to the Redskins this week, they're done.
Yeah.
Maybe not technically, but you can pretty much say they're done. And then if they lost to that one, okay, let's say they beat the Redskins and then they lose to the Cowboys on the road. They're still in trouble because then they don't have a tiebreaker at the Cowboys anymore. So it's almost like you're an extra game back.
Right. So
from the division, I know there's other ways of getting in.
But in elementary terms, if they lose to the Redskins, they can still make the playoffs by going 4-0 in the remaining 4 games. If the Panthers lose 3 of their remaining games and the Vikings lose 3 of their remaining games, they could technically still do it if the Seahawks lose 3 of their remaining games, but they've got like a powder puff schedule. I think they play the 49ers twice and the Cardinals once. There's no way. I mean, I would be shocked if that happened. Yeah. But if they win all of their division games and they split Texans or Rams, those Texans-Rams matchups, then they can win the division if theoretically the Cowboys lose to the Colts.
Yes. So I get all that stuff you're saying. Obviously, they're still in the playoffs, but
playoff hunt.
Okay, that's touche. But I just go back to the same thing I've been saying for a couple weeks now. Number one, they haven't just given us any reason to be optimistic that they can do all these things, number one. Number two, they've put themselves in this position that they need 20 things to happen. Like, they're a good team isn't in this position. Like, that's just the reality. Like, you and I were talking earlier, you're like, the Titans are like the Eagles of the AFC right now in terms of like their record and where they stand. And the Eagles couldn't beat the Titans either. So it's just, like, they haven't beaten anybody good. They haven't won 2 in a row. They beat the Giants, and it was a good win, but you also barely beat the Giants, who are not a very good team. And if Pat Shurmur, I mean, I'm not going to throw what ifs and all that stuff, but Pat Shurmur lost that game for them maybe more than the Eagles won it.
The one game that's going to really come back to bite them hard. You could talk about the Cowboys game, but the Panthers game is really the one.
Especially that was the one they were up 13-0, right?
Right. Yeah. The first 3 quarters were the worst
great
3 quarters of Cam Newton's
and the Eagles were fantastic in those first 3 quarters.
Yeah, and now you look at it, the Panthers own the tiebreaker over them. I think had the Panthers not owned the tiebreaker over them, I think the Eagles
things would be looking a lot better right now. Yeah.
They'd be 6-5, and they would probably have a pretty strong grasp of. They'd actually probably be in the Redskins spot as the 6th seed right now.
Yeah, I mean that's the crazy part about. We give Doug Peterson a lot of flack when he says the whole they're one play away thing, but the reality is, like, if they win a couple of these games that they messed up, like, they would be in a better position, which is why I think everybody's like if they had been getting killed in these games and they still were 5-6, like, then maybe this discussion is different. But the fact that they were close is why everybody's like, maybe I have a little bit of hope left. I personally don't. I don't think they're making the playoffs if I'm predicting right now. The Cowboys look like a pretty good team, so
if they beat simply finish against the Titans and finish against the Panthers, this conversation
I'm in a different tone right now for sure.
Right. And I think there's a lot that goes into that, right? So mismanaging the bottom of the roster, mismanaging depth, obviously the injuries, you don't want to make injuries an excuse, whatever. They are. There's not a front office in this league that does not consider injuries an excuse.
And it is. I mean, it's coach speak is the reality. But Doug does this thing where he's constantly lists off how they have all these injuries. I'm not trying to make injuries an excuse. Well, then stop saying it.
There are.
If you want to say, all right, injuries have screwed us, say it. Don't beat around the bush. We all see it.
I mean, and I guarantee you, they lose these 2 games, then they're going to say, "Hey, we're beaten up." Blah 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 blah.
Yes, but as we've talked about. Their problems on offense don't have to do with injuries.
On the nose, my friend, on the nose.
Defense, sure. And everybody blamed Jim Schwartz anyway when they weren't banged up, so I don't even know what that is.
I'm really kind of getting over the whole Jim Schwartz.
But the offense, they have at this moment right now, Darren Sproles even might play this week. We'll get it. We'll just copy and paste our discussion on that from a few weeks ago. But the point being, the only guys that they don't really have that they should have are Jai, who Josh Adams might be better than him.
Yeah.
And then they don't have Mac Hollins, and Mike Wallace was supposed to be a guy, but in reality, you can just pretend like he was never here.
The thing for me is they haven't figured out this wide receiver group. And I think that needs to be a larger discussion.
Golden Tate thing, yeah.
Moving forward,
we can talk.
Aguilar.
Let's talk about Golden Tate right now because we can tie it into the. So everybody gave the Cowboys a lot of flack for trading a first-round pick for Amari Cooper, which I think is still fair criticism. But if they win the division and he looks like a piece, like he has, he looks pretty. He had a fumble, I think, against the Saints, but I mean, he had 185 yards a week before, most of it coming on one play. But They needed a number 1 receiver. They plugged him in. They figured out how to use him. I know it's a little different because they didn't have any receivers before, so they went maybe not. They had a bunch of number 3 receivers, and they plug in a guy, and they figured out how to use him. Whereas the Eagles traded a 3rd-round pick, thinking that they could be a contender this year, and they just haven't been able to figure out how to use him. They force-fed him last week. He's had more targets than Nelson Aguilar or Alshon Jeffrey since he's been here.
Almost combined.
Yeah, I mean, Zach Ertz might be the only one that had more than him, actually. They finally started using Dallas Goedert more last week, which is a really good sign because I think they should keep doing that. But it's early, and there still is time for Tate to prove his value. But at this current stage, you take the L on that trade.
Well, they're forcing it, and
they are.
And that's what my concern would be if Darren Sproles played, is that they'd force him,
especially which they've done before. The first week he started that game.
Yeah, that's the thing is I think this team isn't worried about optics, but they're worried about making the most of the value and stuff. And I think that that's not the way to play it. I think you've got to focus on what works for you. And the 2 things that have worked for you, for the most part, are Alshon Jeffrey and Zach Ertz. And so that's who you've got to focus on. Dallas Goedert, when he's been targeted, he's been terrific. Nelson Aguilar will have these flashes, and then you don't.
I mean, he had the most important play of the game, maybe.
Right, you got to go back
4th
to
down.
him. He's a guy that I'd want to establish early against the Redskins because he has had success against the Redskins. Even when he was considered a bust, he did well against the Redskins. So I mean, this wide receiver position is just... That's the thing, is like, I think Carson is playing very, very well. Yeah, does he have his...
Eliminate the Saints game when you're talking about that, but yeah.
I mean, yeah. But, like, I just don't think his wide receiver group is used properly. You saw early on against the Giants, which I thought was really well done, is they set up Ertz and Jeffrey to get yards after the catch. That's not
I was about to say, like, the whole thing with Tate was he's great at getting the yak. He hasn't really been getting that. Then Alshon had this great play where he got it and he ran, like, upfield.
Where he was doing, like, Pete Maravich moves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of the more confusing things, their usage of Alshon. Like, last year, even though, like, there were some struggles, him and Wentz maybe weren't on the same page, he was getting targeted, like, a lot. He had 120 targets last year.
Yeah.
And he only had, like, I forget, it was like 50-something catches or 60-something catches.
And he only had, like, 700.
This year, he's catching most of the balls that are thrown to him. He's just not getting thrown to very. Like, you wrote about Alshon earlier this week, how they haven't used him as much. I think if you average it out, his first 4 weeks, because he came in week 4 against the Titans was his first game, I think he was averaging 8 targets and 5 catches a game.
9.5 targets.
9.5 targets and 5 catches a game or something like that. And then since he's averaging like 4 targets and 3 catches, like it's bad. Like if he's your number one receiver, then treat him like that. Like don't work Tate in the way you need to work him in, but don't force feed him because you feel all this pressure from everybody criticizing you for the move.
Yeah,
which is what it felt like last week.
And I think the trade it's more about, it wasn't when we talked about the benefits of the trade after it was made. It was more of not necessarily his production, but what he could do for the rest of the offense. The offense has been stale. Like, it's been worse somehow.
The passing offense, at least, yeah.
So that's why you and I, our prescription for this cure to awfulness on offense is to run the football. Corey Clement looks healthy. Corey Clement had his best game of the season against the Giants.
It flew under the radar because everyone wanted to talk about Josh Adams, but
right. Josh Adams is a legit player. Whether he's a legit bell cow starter, that's a whole other discussion, but he is a legit
for right now
player.
He is their number one guy.
Yeah, he's a legit NFL player, and I think when you look at how this Eagles team is built, they would benefit from running the football, especially because of how they incorporate RPOs and how athletic their offensive linemen are. Like, just do it. Like, I don't care. To open this Redskins game, if you want to run the ball 3 times and you don't pick up a first down, I'm cool with that. Get Adams going, get Clement going. They
did the same thing in the first quarter. They've still been 9 out of 11 first quarters shut out. Josh Adams had that 50-yard run that was called back, and then they kind of got away from the run again in the first quarter. So
you can't do that.
Yeah.
This kid can play, and it could be that
let him get into a groove. Even if he gets stuffed 3 plays in a row, like you're getting that out of the way.
And something we need to talk, and I wrote about this yesterday on Friday. These rookies, for everything that you could say about this rookie class, they have a lot of tenacity. They bounce back from bad plays all the time. Josh Adams could have let his frustration from the 51-yard touchdown callback get to him. Instead, he told his offensive line...
They're mature.
Yeah, instead he told his offensive line, hey, we're going to get another one. And they did. Dallas Goedert whiffs on a blitz by Alec Ogletree, 8-yard loss on a sack. Comes back, catches a one-arm pass. Avonte Maddox might be one of the most mentally tough rookies I've ever seen to switch positions and then become actually a standout at free safety. They're having these young guys contribute, and while you might not be seeing the results on the field, I think long-term that's a good move. Those 3 pieces are very important. Josh Sweat's getting his playing time.
Well, the fact that nothing's too big for these guys is a really good attribute to seeing a rookie.
Right. I think long-term this team, whether they make the playoffs or not, I think they will be in the playoff discussion for the foreseeable future because their rookies are starting to
fill out the roster. And that says something after 2 kind of well, I mean, 2017 class is kind of a problem area right now.
Right, outside of Derek Barnett, who's now had shoulder surgery.
Yeah, he was the only one that was really like starting even. Yeah.
Right. And I think
Sidney Jones should play this week, but I mean, will he last the whole game?
That's one of those Darren Sproles things where it's like, does it matter?
Which is sad because it's his second year.
I want to see more Craven LeBlanc in the slot. I thought Devontae Bosby had a pretty good second half rewatching the game. I think Shandon Sullivan's probably just a role player, special teams player at this point. But I think Rasul, if he's healthy, could do well against a guy like Josh Dotson. We'll get into matchups a little bit later, but let's kind of talk about the Redskins and what they bring to the table, because there's this narrative that they're all banged up and they're terrible. Cool. Well, it's a division matchup. They're going to play them tough.
And their defense is pretty good, too.
My first heavy draft work was Colt McCoy's draft.
Wow.
When I first started really
What year was that?
It was the Sam Bradford year.
Wow. Prolific year for average white quarterbacks.
I want to say it was here, let me...
That'd be 2009 or something like that, right?
I was in college,
So 1974?
Oh, you're 2 years younger than me. Colt McCoy. Let's see. Hold on. Side note, I was just astonished to find out that Justin Peele was drafted in 2002. I just remember watching
the Eagles tight ends coach, yeah.
Yeah, 2010. Yeah, it was 2010.
Damn, I was a year off.
And to me, he's a guy that I was a big fan of because I think he fits well into a West Coast offense. Jay Gruden is clearly also a very big fan of his.
Yeah.
And
what if the franchise plays is all I'm saying?
Well, who knows? Who knows?
That's all I'm saying.
Not Mark. Mark doesn't know. But Mark's actually almost done the NFC East
tour.
Quadfrecta or whatever it's called. All he needs to
Quadfrecta? Do you just make up a word?
Yeah, he'll sign with the Giants next offseason.
Oh, man, that'd be funny.
Technically, he played in their stadium forever, so if you really want to make it...
Hey, there you go.
So anyway...
but Colt McCoy.
Colt McCoy is a guy who can make plays. I don't know if you remember, several years ago, he came in and played very, very well. He came in for Kirk Cousins, played very, very well against the Cowboys. I think it was a Thursday night or a Monday night game, and whooped their ass. Really just beat them.
Yeah.
He's a guy that takes a lot of risks with the ball. He's not afraid to spin it. He's not afraid to take shots down the field. I do think he will test some... He's very smart. I think he will test Rasul Douglas and Sidney Jones pretty often. Is he very physically gifted? No. I think everything... His talent's between the ears and maybe with his feet, to an extent. His pocket presence is pretty good. But... this Eagles team, you never know with them, especially with the secondary as banged up as it is. At running back, Adrian Peterson's having a really strong year. I've been waiting for him to kind of fall off.
It's pretty crazy.
The Eagles have had a tough time tackling over the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
This is a game for them.
And really no Jordan Hicks.
And you have two guys.
No Jalen Mills.
And you have two starters with broken thumbs.
Two starting linebackers with broken thumbs. Yeah, Nigel Bradham just had surgery on Monday.
Right, so it's going to be a little bit tougher to wrap
and
up.
he doesn't go down easy.
Yeah, no.
He's always been famous for that, but especially now in his later years where he maybe isn't as fast anymore.
Nate Gary had a terrible game against the Giants.
Yeah, he wasn't good.
The one saving grace is Malcolm Jenkins, who I think is the MVP of this team right now. Not that that's saying very much, but he's going to be out there. They're going to have. This actually might be a better game for Corey Graham because if they do run the ball, he is actually a pretty decent tackler. On defense, they've got a lot of stuff that they can throw at you.
I think Ryan Kerrigan has 11 sacks in 15 career games against the Eagles.
Yeah, he makes the most of his time against Philadelphia. Mason Foster is one of the top tacklers in the league. DJ Swearinger's having a really strong year. Josh Norman's still Josh Norman. They traded for Clinton Dix, who he's played okay since he's been there, but again, he'll probably be put on someone like Zack, and that'll be an interesting matchup in this game. But yeah, the Redskins don't scare you. It's just they're not bad. Even with the injuries, they're not bad. They're just blah. Kind of sounds familiar, huh? Kind of sounds like the Eagles.
Yeah. Their injuries have been mostly on offense.
Right, exactly. And they do, their offensive line is a little banged up.
Let's before we get into full preview, let's just go through some of these injured guys, because one guy that's a question mark right now. The full injury report for Monday night's game will come out tomorrow. The guys that you'd expect to miss are going to. Jalen Mills won't play. Jordan Hicks won't play. Vontae Maddox doesn't look like will play. It seems like Sidney Jones is on track. He's been practicing all week. Rasul Douglas on track. Michael Bennett has missed 2 straight practices with a foot injury. in the locker room yesterday, he was talking like he thinks he should be able to play on Monday, but he's missed 2 straight practices now. If he doesn't practice on Saturday, I mean, I know he's a veteran, so it's a little unique, and he's a guy that historically has taken a break for practice. That's like kind of how he goes about doing his thing. But he's been their most consistent pass rusher on the team this season. He has 6.5 on the year. He's had a lot of pressures. I mean, we've talked about how impressed we've been with him. For all the problems Howie had with this offseason, like Michael Bennett was an absolute home run.
Yeah.
But if they don't have him, like all of a sudden their defensive line doesn't look as scary because then unless Josh Sweat steps up because he would clearly have to play. But this Redskins offensive line is exploitable right now. Maybe this is Tim Jernigan's coming out game. I don't know.
Yeah, this could be a good game.
But
Fletcher Cox.
You need Fletcher Cox to be his dominant self. Like if they can just hit McCoy a lot and force a turnover, then they might win this game by a lot. But if Michael Bennett's not playing, I'm a little worried.
They need a blowout win, and this is an opportunity for them to get it.
It's probably the last one remaining on the schedule you look at and be like, I could see a blowout.
Yeah, I mean, the Texans game.
You mean Redskins on the road? It's on the road, so it's tough.
I would say that, I'm actually optimistic that Bennett will play, and here's why.
I am too. I just as of now, it's questionable.
He had the injury, and then he came back in the second half and played incredibly. Yep. So that's why
he was almost better.
Yeah. So that's the optimism there. I do think Josh Sweat needs more time.
This might be the week.
This could be the week. There's also the fact that you do have Timmy Jernigan. He's got his legs under him a little bit.
I think he played 19 snaps last week, which is more than I thought he would, honestly.
Yeah, same. But I thought he brought some pretty good energy. It was fun watching him.
He's playing for his he has a contract, but he's playing for a contract pretty much.
Well, but he's also playing for his daughter who wants to go back to the Super Bowl. Hate to tell her. I hope she doesn't listen to this podcast. It might ruin her day. But yes, he is playing for a contract. And if he means as much to this defensive line as they seem to promote him as, hopefully he delivers in these next 5 games, because these next 5 games are going to be the season. They're in playoff football throughout. They can maybe lose to the Rams.
Lane Johnson even was like, these next 2 games are our season.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Again, the Cowboys could tailspin. There could be something that happens, but you can't rely on that. You have to win your games.
They really have to, as corny as it is, they have to go game by game. If they win this week, all right, we won this week. Now let's go on to the next one and beat the Cowboys. All right, we beat the Cowboys. Now we just have to close out and win. Two of one. Two of three. Yes.
Two
of the 1 games remaining.
Yeah, so they have to win 2 of 3.
But yeah, so they should. I mean, we'll get into predictions later. If they lose this game, then you can start questioning a lot of things about this season, fully, because they have no business losing this game.
But what's funny is they're mediocre. They're not a bad team. This is not a bad
average.
Team.
They're average.
Th're an average team. They're probably going to finish 7-9, 8-8, 9-7.
They're a Jeff Fisher program.
Right. No, there's a lot of Jeff Fisher to this program.
Oh God.
To be honest. But I think they'll figure out the off. I think long term, this is still a Super Bowl playoff contender team. It's just this year is just not added up properly. There'll be changes. There's going to be a mass exodus on defense, most likely. But I think
the roster's going to look a lot different next year.
I do think the scheme is the thing that will stay the same. I think Schwartz will stick around. I think unless there's the absolute fall from grace in the next 5 games. I don't think he's the issue. But, yeah, again, I think this matchup favors the Eagles. They should be favored in this game. They should win this game, but they also should have beat the Carolina Panthers. They also should have beat the Titans. They should have beat the Minnesota
Cowboys.
Vikings. They should have beat the Cowboys. They should have probably beaten the Bucks. So, again...
That's a lot of games.
Yeah, if you're a betting man...
you bet on that not happening.
Yeah, I mean... I picked I picked the Eagles this week.
The Redskins?
No, I picked the Eagles this week. Everybody's picking the Eagles this week.
Yeah, which is a bad sign.
Yeah,
bad
omen.
And also, whoever I pick, it tends to be wrong, and I picked the Eagles.
So there you go.
Spoiler alert.
Zack. Send the hate mail his way. But...
Hey, I picked the Giants to win last week. So.
Well, there you go. So, where do you stand with this team going into this game? If they lose this game by 3 points, what's your take on this team?
I would say, even before this game, after watching the Cowboys beat the Saints, I got the nail out, I have the coffin out, and I have my hammer. I just haven't started hitting it yet.
Dang.
I haven't. The nail's not in the coffin yet, but it's I'm holding the nail above.
Wow.
I
mean,
you'd use a hammer to nail a coffin right out. I'm hoping that analogy is right.
Yeah, I mean, I've bought the plot of land. I've done my research. There's a nice tree overlooking it. The hole is dug. It's a matter of, do I want, driftwood? Do I want
Oh boy,
metal?
we're taking this deep. I like it.
Yeah, have you watched that new show with Michael Douglas? On
the one with Alan Arkin or whatever?
Yeah,
no, I haven't watched it yet. Is it good?
The Kaminsky.
Yeah, the Kaminsky method or whatever.
Method.
Yeah.
Really good, but there's a. It's just that's why I'm bringing up the caskets. There's a scene where they talk about caskets. This Eagles season is just like the division wanted to give itself to the Eagles. Like it really did. It was
like, take me.
Yeah, I mean.
No, it's been presented to them on a platter, and they keep dropping the platter on the floor.
And, they wouldn't be the first Super Bowl team to
fall back.
I mean, the Broncos did it recently. The Ravens did it a few years
Even
ago.
the Patriots did it that one year.
Yeah, their first year.
I
think that's their only...
way back when.
I think they've only missed the playoffs
and it was
twice.
when Brady was injured that year, right? Matt Castle was the quarterback?
That's the second time they missed it.
Okay, but that wasn't after a Super Bowl.
It was 2009.
It all clumps together. All right, let's go into actual game preview now. Matchups. So we touched on it a little bit. Let's start with I think Josh Norman will probably be on Alshon Jeffrey.
Yeah, that's a good matchup.
Norman, he's still really good, but I mean, if you just look at his numbers, he's given up a lot of yards this year, and 5 touchdowns actually. Which, I mean, so he's more beatable than he's ever been probably. Mm-hmm. But the Eagles also haven't gone to Alshon very much, and I don't know if it's him, if it's the cornerbacks that are covering. Like, he's obviously in a focus of opposing defenses. They need to get that dude back going because this offense is at its best when he's at his best.
Yeah, I think...
Like you even in that Titans game, they started off that game really fast too, 13-3, I believe. He had 100 yards. It was his only 100-yard game as an Eagle. Like, get back to that.
Yeah, I think they need to target him and Nelson early. If Tate gets open, you throw to him, whatever. But he's really got to be just like an appendage of the offense as opposed to like the right and left hand, if that makes sense. I think you've got to test Josh Norman because if you can prove that you can throw on Josh Norman, that's going to make the secondary go, hey, this is going to be an issue, and you make them kind of press a little bit. You want to take away some safeties from the box because you want Josh Adams to be able to run wild like the stallion that he is.
The crazy thing is they're probably going to be game planning for Josh Adams now.
Yeah, I mean, Doug Peterson even said it's going to be hard to hide him like as a starter and as a focal point. And I think when you consider that, I think his matchup against Mason Foster is going to be really interesting. Foster is really good at bringing down ball carriers, but Josh is a guy that can stick his foot in the ground, make one cut, and be gone. And I think that's what's most impressive about him. He's not the biggest. He's very tall, but he's also very lean. And I'm interested to see how that matchup happens. It works out because Foster's kind of like a compact linebacker. And to see who wins out there will be interesting. Another matchup that I like for the Eagles is Fletcher Cox against their interior, the Redskins' interior offensive line. It's banged up. They've got a lot of missing pieces. I think Fletcher Cox could eat in this game on the stat sheet. Just because he's not had sacks doesn't mean he isn't playing very well.
I mean, he had like 5 pressures last week. Yeah.
Right, yeah, he balled. So I think this is where you see him get maybe one of those 2.5 sack games that comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, and another matchup, we talked about this a little bit earlier, I would say the linebackers versus Adrian Peterson. Mm-hmm. They struggled quite a bit against Saquon Barkley in the first half, and he was actually getting the ball. They struggled against Ezekiel Elliott when Jordan Hicks was healthy. He's gone. Well, not gone, but he's not playing this week. Nigel Bradham only has one hand. Kamu Grugier-Hill only has one hand. And Nate Gary hasn't really shown that he should be playing too much on defense. So, I mean, that's a little concerning. I mean, maybe the hope is maybe Peterson gets his yards, but they don't get any touchdowns in the passing game.
Right, and you got to hope that the D-line plays well against the run. I'd say for the Eagles' offense, another interesting one would be Zack Ertz against either HaHa Clinton Dix or DJ Swearinger. Both of those guys are very physical. Zach Ertz isn't really known for his physicality, but I mean, he's been mostly unstoppable this season, and if he gets 7 catches in this game, he'll break Brian Westbrook's record for catches in a season, and I think that would be pretty doable at this point. Here's the thing: Zach's having a great year. But he's expected to have a great year, and I think that's part of the reason why this team struggles, is they only have one guy kind of doing what he's supposed to be
totally, yeah.
From an output
relative to expectations, yeah.
Yeah, and so, Carson's supposed to play well. He's playing well, but, nobody else is really stepping up, outside of maybe Josh Adams, consistently, so that's the concern that I have going into this game, because it feels like the Eagles' offense typically plays down to the ability of their opponent. And typically that ends poorly. So, yeah, that's how I feel about the matchups.
All right, well,
end scene.
Well, let's do predictions then. What do you got?
I forgot what I said. I think I said 24-19 Eagles over Redskins. I think it's going to be a touchdown game, within that realm. But I do think the Eagles come out quicker than normal in this game. I think they come up with some plays for kind of similar to the Colts game, where they really take advantage of the tight ends and the running game, and they use 12 personnel quite a bit on that first drive, get in the end zone, and that starts them off right. And then I think the Redskins kind of make a third quarter comeback, and then the Eagles are able to close them out because of Josh Adams.
Yeah, I had Eagles 21, Redskins 13. And it might even feel like the Eagles beat them by more than that, but I still don't have that much confidence in the Eagles offense right now, so 21 is an accomplishment for them, 3 touchdowns. But yeah, Carson Wentz maybe keeps going back in the right direction since that Saints game. Corey Clement, I think, could have a good game. Yeah, I got the Eagles winning, which means which means they're gonna lose.
Probably. Yeah, you really sold that one.
Gotta sell it.
The outlook's interesting. If this is a Monday night game, so make sure you're watching the other games. You want the Panthers to lose. You want the Vikings to lose. Who cares about the Giants at this point? But those are the games that you really want to pay attention to, because if the Eagles beat the Redskins, the Panthers lose, and the Vikings lose, the Eagles will be in prime position to potentially take on that 6th seed race as well, so you have that fallback plan.
All right, for sure. All right, let's end on that note. We covered a lot of ground today. Thank you guys for listening.
Like Josh Adams.
We actually, before we go, I'll go and see if there's any comments to read from the last podcast, because I always talk about...
they talked about Darren Sproles.
Lynch was clutch. Josh Adams was great. He killed it at Notre Dame. Why would the Eagles think he wasn't still going to be great? Give Josh Adams 17 to 23 carries a game. Very specific. And the RPO finally works. Stop saying Carson isn't clutch. He's been accurate all year. His team has let him down. I don't think we ever said he wasn't clutch.
No, I just said that he can't carry the team. That's pretty apparent given their record. I agree with him though. With Josh Adams, I'm a 17 to 23 carry kind of guy myself.
Then there's we own Giants. Someone asked us, do we get paid for this? We do. We get paid our regular amount for working.
Part of it.
You won't go anywhere with Michael Bennett. He's a cancer to any locker room, says Mike M. That is just like...
That's interesting, because...
It's insane to me that people are still saying that.
Well, defensive line coach Chris Wilson said that his peers respect him in the locker room. He's always been very...
I've seen younger guys, practice squad guys, going up to him with their iPads to ask him for tips. He's pulled Jordan Mailata. He's not a cancer. It's all focused on that kind of BS charge he had that keeps getting delayed. The thing that happened to him, he was charged for in January of 2017, and they've pushed it back again to the point where it's going to probably be after the new year, so it'll be 2 full years since the alleged incident. So I'm not a legal expert, but that doesn't sound like anything that he wouldn't be playing right now if there was an... Anyway, everybody likes Michael Bennett. You haven't heard anybody say a bad thing about him since he got here. Okay, Eagles fans. This is a Giants fan, I take it, from Nick MX Forever. Okay, Eagles fans, don't get excited. It was just the bleep Giants. Against any quality team, the Eagles suck.
That's valid. It's true. It's
so
accurate.
far, yeah.
Except for the Colts.
Yeah, Frank Reich.
Yeah.
They have his number. Oh, and there's some mean stuff in response to that. Okay. All right, we'll end on that note. Make sure you guys subscribe. We're on all the apps. and leave a comment, tweet at us, let us know what you want us to talk about, and we'll talk about it on the show. Thanks, guys. This episode of the No Huddle Show was brought to you by Chevrolet Cadillac of Turnersville, a Penske automotive dealer. Visit today at the Route 42 location in Turnersville, New Jersey, or online at ChevroletofTurnersville.com and CadillacofTurnersville.com.